Welcome to week 2. We have a Thursday night matchup between the Minnesota Vikings and the Philadelphia Eagles after a tough week last week with the Vikings losing to the Buccaneers in one they did not expect to lose. They are going to be 7-point road dogs to Philadelphia and Philly. So this is showdown coverage brought to you by sharpfootballanalysis.com. Let's head over to DraftKings. So at the top, we have Justin Jefferson priced at pretty much the highest that he can be priced. I mean, we do see on occasion, we will see skill position players get above 12,400, but we're still talking like 12,800. You're not really going to see a position player get up to like 13,000. So Justin Jefferson is already pretty much capped at how expensive he can be after he had like 150 yards in week 1 in the first half ish. I know he finished the game with like 150, so it was a slow second half. But I mean, when you produce that many fantasy points in the first half, I guess you can take the second half off. So Justin Jefferson is going to be a focal point of the lineups. Fortunately for us, he's kind of the focal point of their offense because we're going to want to stack the Eagles. That's going to be the trend of this week. So we can play Justin Jefferson and feel comfortable that we're going to get most of the fantasy production from the offense in a game where they're expected to get run out of the building, right, as 7-point road dogs. 7 points is kind of high. I could see the Vikings covering that. Also, the over-under 48.5, I could also see that going over pretty easily as well. We've seen these teams play each other tough in the past. So Justin Jefferson should be a staple of our lineups even at that price. It's not going to keep his roster percentage down either. He's going to be extremely highly rostered. So we're going to have to do unique things to get Justin Jefferson in our lineups in ways that make us feel comfortable. Jalen Hurts is projected higher than Justin Jefferson by a couple points and really, really sets the tone for how we're going to build our lineups at 11,400. So if you compare Hurts to Cousins, I mean, 11,400 to 9,200, pretty big difference. That is going to push a lot of people to play the Vikings, but I've bet against Vegas many times in the past and I've lost many times, right? So very, very often the optimal lineup is going to feature 4 or more players from the winning team. So when Vegas is telling you that they think that Philadelphia is going to win by roughly 7 points, we're going to want to focus our lineups around the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, when you look at that, who knows what they're going to do at running back? DeVonta Smith and A.J. Brown are going to get the bulk of the targets, like almost all of them, right? So their roster percentage is going to be super high. And then that leaves you with Goedert, who got 0 targets last week. Quez Watkins, who only got 2 targets last week. They don't even play. Like Olamide Zaccheaus will barely play because Quez Watkins played 71%. So it does not feel great to stack the Eagles. But that's a good thing because if we're going to be willing to triple stack Jalen Hurts, that means we're going to have the opportunity to get unique with 7-point home favorites, and that doesn't happen very often. So get used to building around Jalen Hurts. Brings us to A.J. Brown at 10,600. Really weird. A.J. Brown's priced at 10,600 versus DeVonta Smith at 9,000. I get the price for A.J. Brown. I just don't get the disparity. They both had 10 targets last week. DeVonta Smith got the touchdown. A.J. Brown got the yardage. Most of his yardage came on one drive in which the Philadelphia Eagles needed to score to keep the lead late in the game over the Patriots. So a lot of his production came on one drive where they had to have it, which is good. That points to the importance of A.J. Brown, but it's just DeVonta Smith was utilized all game. So DeVonta Smith is my favorite play of the slate at 9,000. He lets you fit a few more guys in. If you start your lineup with Jalen Hurts and DeVonta Smith, you kind of get yourself in trouble because you've spent a ton of money and you are playing like very, very high roster percentage right off the bat. Like your top 3 plays are not very unique whatsoever. So I'll be trying to put together lineups with like Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, and then sprinkle in 2 of the ancillary pieces. Also, Jalen Hurts, DeVonta Smith, sprinkle in some of the ancillary pieces like Dallas Goedert, like Quez Watkins thing. So with my Eagles, so we're gonna go Kirk had an excellent play at 9,200. So he had 22.5 points last week. Probably could have had a little bit better production, but you can't really complain with 344 yards and 2 touchdowns in a game. It just didn't look great. It didn't feel great, right? They were trying to play keep up with the Buccaneers. So a lot of his fantasy production came in late in the game, right? So probably a similar game this week. It's just going to look a little bit different. And he's probably going to be down from the start of the game on. So expect to see Kirk Cousins outproduce that 9,200 by quite a bit. It just gets expensive to play Kirk Cousins with Justin Jefferson, especially in a lineup that you want to stack for Eagles. So what you're going to have to do is something like play Kirk Cousins with one of the ancillary pieces we talk about soon. Probably not even your Jordan Addison. We'll talk about that in a minute with KJ Osborn, but you're probably going to want to do something like Kirk Cousins and KJ Osborn in the flex with Jalen Hurts at captain, with DeVonta Smith, with two of his other ancillary pieces. A build like that is probably how you're going to want to approach that. Another build that you can approach is Justin Jefferson at captain in an Eagles 4x2. So Justin Jefferson at captain, Kirk Cousins in the flex, and then Jalen Hurts and a few cheap Eagles in the flex. So that brings us down to Alexander Mattison. His usage was on par with the best in the league. 71% snap share. He only shared the backfield with Ty Chandler. Again, we'll probably only share the backfield with Ty Chandler. Myles Gaskin is there. He's going to have another week under his belt, but I do not expect him to be utilized very heavily, if at all, probably not at all. So 2-man backfield. Alexander Mattison getting a ton of run. His price is a little bit high for what people are going to be comfortable with after what they saw last week, but his with 71% usage, his fantasy production is gonna go up. He is playing a tough defense. Jalen Carter looked absolutely incredible last week to a defensive line that was kings amongst men last year, and it's just unfair that they got to add Jalen Carter. So it's not like he's going to get an easy run, but he will get targeted in the pass game. Alexander Mattison, someone that I like including as maybe a one-off in a 5x1 with the Eagles. So someone to consider. Ty Chandler you can consider as well. I know that we're a little bit ahead, but if you're talking about a backfield that's only going to utilize 2 backs, even 29% of the snaps at Ty Chandler's price is worth throwing in, especially when you're talking about large field stuff. TJ Hockenson was overshadowed a little bit by Justin Jefferson, or a lot of bit, I should say, but he also had 9 targets in his own right. So, and that's on par with what he had last year, right? He had like 9, averaged 8 targets a game, got paid in this offseason. So clearly they wanted to continue utilizing him, and they have. So it was more of the same from last year in week 1. And he, 6,800 is fair, especially on Thursday night showdown slate. If you want to check out the article that I wrote this week for this slate, especially with our promo code SAVE15 to get 15% off any of our packages at sharpfootballanalysis.com. You can read the article where I said never, ever, ever discount tight ends on Thursday night showdown slates because they can be killer. So TJ Hockenson and Dallas Goedert, the grown men of the group, we're definitely considering those for our Thursday night showdown slate. So TJ Hawkinson's getting a ton of usage for someone who's 7,000. Put him right on par with Alexander Mattison for how much I prefer to put him in my lineup. Once we get to Jordan Addison, it gets a little bit dicey. So Jordan Addison only played on less than 40% or less than 50% of the snaps. And so the full-time starter was KJ Osborn, but Jordan Addison did get the touchdown. So at 6,400, he looks like a little bit of a value, but I think we might get a couple more weeks of KJ Osborn before we see Jordan Addison completely take over. After all, KJ Osborn had the exact same amount of targets. Both of them had 6 targets, and KJ Osborn has been productive in this offense in years past. So I don't believe that KJ Osborn is going to go away completely anytime soon. I think we get another week of taking the discount on KJ Osborn. That $1,400 is not something to scoff at. That's a considerable amount of money, especially in a slate when we have some very expensive skill position players like AJ Brown, like Justin Jefferson, that we want to try to get to. So I like throwing KJ Osborn in. I mentioned earlier playing KJ Osborn and Christian Kirk by themselves, or Kirk Cousins by themselves in a 4x2 with the Eagles. You could also do that with TJ Hockenson and Kirk Cousins, but you're going to have to go cheaper with the Eagles. And as we talked about to lead off the show, it gets really uncomfortable really fast as you start going down that Eagles depth chart because their target tree is just so condensed on DeVonta Smith and A.J. Brown. So that brings us to Dallas Goedert. Zero targets in week one, but he was on the field for 91% of the snaps. He's not going anywhere. That does not mean that we did not get any usage for Josh Oliver. After all, actually, Josh Oliver played a considerable amount of snaps. So it wasn't as if there was no other tight end involved. It was just that Dallas Goedert was on the field almost the entire game. Zero targets is not going to happen again, at least very, very, very rarely. So at home, up 7 points. I do not expect Dallas Goedert to put up another goose egg in the target column. If anyone else is expecting that, that's great. That's great for us. Because we're going to need Dallas Goedert in this one. If you're going to be on board with me and you're going to stack the Eagles offense, you're going to need to utilize Dallas Goedert, or else you're just not going to be able to afford it. You cannot start every lineup with Justin Jefferson, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith. Like, you probably can't even fit those 4 in one lineup without any of them, even without any of them a captain. So don't expect to be able to just get all of the players that give you the warm and fuzzies. Speaking of players that don't give you the warm and fuzzies, we have a running back situation with Kenneth Gainwell got a ridiculous amount of run in week one. Was it because he was the only back that's been in the system? Was it because maybe DeAndre Swift was banged up as he typically is? I don't know why Kenneth Gainwell came in as a start. Well, maybe we tricked ourselves because DeAndre Swift was only traded for a 4th round pick anyway. So the Eagles had really no incentive to utilize him heavily to begin with. So it shouldn't have been as surprising to see Kenneth Gainwell's usage. But nonetheless, Kenneth Gainwell is going to be out with a rib injury, which leaves us with DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, and Boston Scott. Rashad Penny and Boston Scott are considerably cheaper than DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift is by far the most talented of the 3. This is all speculation. This is something that we're going to have to pay attention to all the way up until game time. I don't envy anybody doing projections for this game. I have no idea how you're going to project this backfield. Easiest thing to say is that it's probably going to be a 3-man running back by committee. All of them are going to play roughly 30% of the snaps. What this kind of does for me is solidify Jalen Hurts' role as my favorite captain of the slate and just makes me up his exposure even more, because I don't see any of these running backs as really viable options to get their run game going, and that's going to boost Jalen Hurts' rushing share. So my advice would probably be to play DeAndre Swift and hope that his week one usage was just slow to get integrated into the offense. Rashad Penny was on the practice squad, so who knows how integrated he is in the offense. But DeAndre Swift is clearly the most talented of the bunch. Boston Scott is somebody that you want to consider throwing into lineups in large field, just because he's been there and he's been a thorn in the side of every running back that's been on the Eagles for the past few years. So it would be no surprise to see Boston Scott get in the end zone. He'll probably be my favorite punt play outside of Josh Oliver. So he's going to be my favorite punt play of the Eagles backs. Like, I guess Swift's a little expensive to be a punt play, but all 3 of them are just, you're throwing them in the lineup to get your cumulative exposure down a little bit. Quez Watkins does that too at 3,000, and his roster percentage is going to be lower because now we have Boston Scott and Rashad Penny both viable at 2,200 and 1,600. So he fits into that build of like, hey, let's keep stacking Jalen Hurts, because people are going to be afraid to double stack Jalen Hurts, to triple stack Jalen Hurts. And in a game where they're home 7-point favorites, you should be hammering 5x1s, which you don't feel comfortable with most weeks. And you look at this and you're like, how am I hammering 5x1s when I don't feel good about Swift or Watkins or Scott or Penny? Dallas Goedert got 0 targets last week. It doesn't matter. It was a 1-game sample size. You're 7-point home favorites. Just 4x2s with the Eagles, 5x1s with the Eagles. The only way that's going to change is if the Vikings outright win. So even if it's they're losing by 4, I still want exposure to as many Eagles as I can in the same lineup. So that's going to do it for our overview for the players. And let's go ahead and build some lineups. The first thing I want to try is that Justin Jefferson at captain lineup that I talked about. Rarely do I play the captain out of the underdog, especially 7-point underdog, but it's Justin Jefferson, and we have to find unique ways to fit him in there. So we're going to start with Justin Jefferson, Kirk Cousins. Jalen Hurts is probably going to be in 150 max. He's probably going to be in 120 of my lineups or something like that. So starting with these three, pretty easy. And then now you need to save money. So you pick your poison between Josh Oliver, Rashad Penny, Boston Scott, Quez Watkins. For this lineup, since I'm going with Viking at captain, I'm pretty comfortable going with something like, let's just go Rashad Penny, save all that money, and then you can go up a little bit and see what you can kind of fit. Jake Elliott is fine there, and then we have 5,000 to consider. KJ Osborn, I don't really want to fill that up. Eagles wouldn't be terrible for this lineup because you're assuming that the Eagles are doing pretty well if Justin Jefferson is going to have a ceiling game as a 7-point road dog. There's a few things that you can do there, but it really doesn't feel great. I would probably rather do something like Quez, and then you can go up to like Dallas Goedert at 5,800. Actually, that looks really, really nice. So Justin Jefferson at captain, Kirk Cousins, Jalen Hurts, Rashad Penny, Quez Watkins, Dallas Goedert. Super unique. This is something that you would have to do in large field. You wouldn't want to omit Brown and Smith with Jalen Hurts in small field. But yeah, 150 max, this is completely viable. I would be very surprised to see someone put together 150 lineups without landing on this one. Let's go to something more prototypical of what I will probably be doing this weekend. So, or Thursday night. So Jalen Hurts a captain, starting with DeVonta Smith. He's my favorite over AJ Brown. Just the price difference makes it like such an easy decision. I wish they were closer in price, so it wasn't such an easy decision. Of course, that means AJ Brown's 150-yard game is incoming. With that, we want KJ Osborn. We want Kirk Cousins. Talked about this stack a little bit earlier. Now I want 2 pass catchers for Jalen Hurts. Let me throw Dallas Goedert in there. See what we have left. Quez Watkins, leave 900 on the table. Love that. Throw Swift in there. Can't afford Swift by 100. So pick a different back. Boston Scott, Rashad Penny. Rashad Penny or Boston Scott not super likely to catch passes. If you go up from here, you can get to TJ Hockenson. So Jalen Hurts, DeVonta Smith, TJ Hockenson, Kirk Cousins, Dallas Goedert, Rashad Penny. Love that lineup. Something that you could probably play in small field and feel pretty comfortable with. Like we talked about earlier, TJ Hockenson is going to get similar volume to Justin Jefferson. Obviously, not going to get the 150 yards that comes with that volume, but could score a touchdown and we're talking a PPR site. So 8 catches out of TJ Hockenson is huge, and we'll definitely find him in the optimal lineup. So with that being said, that's going to be it from me today. This has been Showdown coverage brought to you by sharpfootballanalysis.com. I'm your host, Adam Wilde, and I will see you next week for the Monday Night City.